My daughter stood in the hallway of the county courthouse, with tears on her face, one hand pressed to her chest, while two sheriff's deputies asked me to turn around and place my hands behind my back. She looked broken. She looked frightened. She looked like a daughter who had finally found the courage to report her dangerous old father. That was the performance. The truth was sitting in a sealed evidence box, 3 floors above us, inside the district attorney's office, next to bank records, forged notary logs, security video, and one audio recording my daughter did not know existed. But at that moment, nobody in that hallway knew that all they saw was a 71-year-old man in a gray suit being treated like a criminal. Before I tell you how my own daughter tried to take everything from me, tell me your name and where you're watching from. Because this story is not just about money. It is about trust, blood, betrayal, and the day I learned that even family can become strangers. My name is Grant Ellison. For 38 years, I had worn a badge in places where people lied for a living. For the last 9 years, I had worn nothing but grief. I did not yell. I did not beg. I did not ask my daughter how she could do this to me. I only looked at her. Her husband, Carter Bell, stood behind her with his expensive haircut, his blue tie, and his hand on her shoulder like he was protecting her from me. Carter leaned close enough for only me to hear. "You should have signed it the first time, old man." One deputy reached for my wrist. That was when the elevator doors opened. A woman in a navy suit stepped out, followed by 2 men carrying leather folders. She moved like someone who had never once had to raise her voice to be obeyed. Deputy Martin, the younger one, froze. The woman looked at me first, then at the handcuffs, then at my daughter. Then she said 4 words that changed the air in that courthouse. "Stop everything. Right now." The hallway went silent. Carter's hand slipped off my daughter's shoulder. The deputy let go of my wrist. My daughter blinked, confused, because she had planned everything except the one thing greedy people always forget. They forget old men used to be young. They forget quiet men may still have friends. And they forget that proof has a way of walking into the room at the worst possible time. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. Some details are dramatized for storytelling, and names have been changed. I was born in northern Kentucky, raised on tobacco fields, courthouse steps, church potlucks, and the kind of silence fathers used when they did not know how to say they loved you. By the time all this happened, I was living in Franklin, Tennessee, in a brick ranch house on 6 acres outside town. Not a mansion, not anything flashy, just a clean house with white shutters, a gravel drive, 2 oak trees, and a workshop out back where I kept my late wife's rocking chair under a sheet because I could not bring myself to give it away. My wife, Margaret, had been gone 9 years. Cancer took her slowly, then all at once. After she died, people told me the house would feel too big. They were right. The rooms held too many echoes. Her coffee mug stayed on the second shelf. Her gardening gloves stayed by the back door. Her Bible stayed open to the same page on the nightstand because the last morning she was able to sit up, she had touched that page and whispered, "Don't let bitterness make a home in you, Grant." I tried. God help me, I tried. We had 1 child. Her name was Allison. When she was little, she followed me everywhere. She sat on the floor of my workshop sorting screws into muffin tins. She waited at the window when I came home from night shifts. She wore Margaret's church hats and asked me if princesses could carry flashlights. I paid for her braces. I paid for her first car. I paid for her college apartment in Knoxville when she called crying because her roommate had moved out and left her with the rent. I walked her down the aisle when she married Carter Bell. Even though the first time I shook his hand, something in me went still, not fear, recognition. Carter had the kind of smile I had seen on men standing outside interview rooms. Men who believed charm was a legal defense, but Allison loved him. And a father can survive many suspicions when his daughter looks happy. Carter called himself a financial strategist. That was the first lie. He had a small office in Brentwood with glass walls, fake plants, and a sign on the door that read Bell Meridian Capital. He talked about private placements, bridge funding, distressed assets, and exclusive investor groups, the way preachers talk about salvation. He wore monogrammed cuffs. He drove leased cars. He used words like legacy and security around older people, because those are the words that make lonely widows and retired men open checkbooks. I had seen his kind before, but I told myself Allison was smart. I told myself she knew him better than I did. That was my first mistake, mine, not hers. The house at the center of it all was not mine at first. It belonged to Allison and Carter. A two-story place in Murfreesboro, built in the late 90s with a fenced yard, a bonus room over the garage, and the maple tree I planted the year my granddaughter Emily was born. I helped them buy that house not with a loan, with love. When Carter's credit turned out to be weaker than he had claimed, I quietly put down $120,000 from Margaret's life insurance so my daughter would not be embarrassed. I did not put my name on the deed. I did not ask for a repayment schedule. I told Allison, just make that place safe for Emily. For 12 years, that house was birthday candles, Thanksgiving leftovers, Christmas wrapping paper, and Emily running barefoot through the kitchen with her hair in braids. Then Carter sold it. He convinced Allison the market was peaking. He said they could get $500,000, rent for a year, and put every penny into a development fund he was launching. He called it Bell Meridian Growth Partners. He told her it was going to buy old medical office buildings, renovate them, and lease them back to clinics. He showed her spreadsheets, glossy brochures, and pictures of properties he did not own. Allison signed. The house sold for $500,000. After closing costs and the mortgage payoff, there was a little over $317,000 left. Every dollar went into Carter's company. At least, that was what Allison believed. 6 months later, they were living in a rented townhouse. The money was gone, Carter was behind on his car payments, and my daughter was telling people I was losing my mind. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why my own family wanted me destroyed, I have to take you back to the first warning sign. It came in a white envelope, no drama, no thunder, just a white envelope in my mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I had been cutting back the dead limbs from the peach tree behind the workshop. My knees ached, my hands smelled like sawdust, and I was thinking about Margaret because spring always made me think of her. She used to plant too early. Every year I told her frost would kill the flowers, and every year she said, then they'll die pretty. I carried the mail inside, electric bill, church newsletter, a flyer from a hearing aid clinic, and a notice from Williamson County Register of Deeds. I almost threw it with the junk mail, then I saw my name. The letter said a document had been recorded involving a property associated with Grant H. Ellison. That made me stop. I own 2 properties, my home in Franklin, and a small commercial building near Columbia that I had bought with Margaret in 1988, back when it was a feed supply store. After I retired, I leased it to a plumbing company. Nothing glamorous, but it produced steady income. Enough to pay taxes, insurance, and keep me from touching the investments. Margaret and I had set aside. I had not recorded anything. I had not refinanced anything. I had not signed anything. I sat at the kitchen table and read that letter 3 times. Then I got in my truck and drove to the county office. The clerk was a young woman named Dana with pink nails and kind eyes. She pulled up the record, clicked twice, then frowned. "Mr. Ellison," she said, "there's a power of attorney on file." I looked at her. "Whose?" She turned the monitor slightly, then thought better of it and printed a copy. My daughter's name was on the first page. Allison Marie Bell, attorney in fact for Grant Harold Ellison. My signature was at the bottom. Only it was not my signature. It looked like my name written by someone who had practiced it from a Christmas card. The notary stamp belonged to a woman named Lorna Peel. I had never heard that name in my life. Dana watched my face. "Sir, are you saying you didn't sign this?" "I am saying," I told her, "that whoever filed this has made a serious mistake." That was the first time I felt the old part of me wake up. Not anger, not panic, training. I did not call Allison from the parking lot. I did not drive to Carter's office and put him through a wall. I drove home, locked the copy in my gun safe, and made coffee. Then I took out a yellow legal pad. Margaret used to tease me about those pads. 38 years in law enforcement, and I still trusted paper more than machines. At the top of the page, I wrote one word. Proof. The next morning, I called my lawyer. His name was Daniel Price. People in town called him Danny, but I never did. He had been my friend for 40 years, and friendship is no excuse for making a man sound smaller than he is. Daniel had handled Margaret's estate, our trusts, the commercial lease, and every legal matter I did not want to learn myself. When I told him about the power of attorney, he went quiet. That was how I knew it was worse than I thought. "Grant," he said, "do not confront them yet." I wasn't planning to. I mean it. If someone recorded a forged POA, they may already be using it. For what? A pause. Access. That word stayed with me. Access, not theft, not fraud. Access. A forged power of attorney is not the robbery. It is the key before the robbery. Daniel pulled records that afternoon. By dinner, he called me back. Someone had used that power of attorney to request financial information from my bank. Someone had contacted the tenant in my commercial building asking for a copy of the lease. Someone had called my insurance agent and asked whether my house had a mortgage. Allison's name was on every request, but the email address was wrong. It used her name but not her normal account, AllisonBellFamilyTrust@gmail.com. My daughter had never created a family trust in her life. Carter liked the word trust. Carter liked words that made theft sound like planning. I sat in my dark kitchen that night with the phone on the table. I looked at a framed photograph of Allison at 12 years old, holding a fish she did not want to touch but wanted credit for catching. I remembered Margaret laughing so hard she had to sit down in the grass. That was the first night I admitted something I had not wanted to admit. My daughter was either a victim or she was involved. Both possibilities hurt. One hurt like fear. The other hurt like death. 3 days later, Allison came to my house with a casserole. That was how I knew Carter had sent her. My daughter had never made a casserole in her adult life. She was a takeout woman. She burned toast and called it rustic. But there she was on my porch with a glass dish covered in foil, smiling too hard. "Daddy," she said. I was nearby. She had not called me daddy in years unless she wanted something. I let her in. She looked around the house like she was measuring it, not with her eyes, with her future. She asked if I was sleeping well. She asked if I was taking my medication. I was not on medication except blood pressure pills, and she knew that. She asked if I had been confused lately. I poured coffee and said, "Confused about what?" She laughed softly. "Oh, just little things. Carter said you seemed forgetful at Emily's recital." "I didn't go to Emily's recital," I said. She blinked. It was small, but I saw it. "Allison, what?" "Emily's recital is next Friday." Her face changed for half a second, then she smiled again. "That's what I meant. See? I'm the one confused." She reached across the table and touched my hand. Her fingers were cold. "Daddy, Carter and I have been talking. You're out here alone. This place is a lot for one person. The stairs, the property, the bills. What if something happened?" I looked at her. "This house does not have stairs." Her cheeks flushed. "I mean in general." She pulled papers from her purse. "Not many, just enough. I found a senior community in Brentwood. Beautiful place. Independent living safe. You'd have your own apartment. Meals. People your age. My age. You know what I mean." I looked at the brochure. The first page showed smiling gray-haired people playing cards under artificial light. The second page showed pricing. The third page had a handwritten note from Carter. "Oxit liquidation estimate." He had underlined it twice. I slid the brochure back. "I'm not interested." Allison's mouth tightened. "Just think about it." "I have. You didn't even look." "I looked enough." For the first time, I saw impatience break through her performance. "Daddy, you can't keep living like Margaret is coming back. There are sentences that do not sound violent until they hit the right wound. That one hit clean." I stared at my daughter. She looked away. "I'm sorry," she said, but she was not sorry enough to stop. I did not yell. I did not beg. I just waited. She gathered her purse, left the casserole on my counter, and kissed my cheek before she walked out. After she pulled away, I took the casserole to the trash. Then I washed my hands. Not because of the food, because of the lie. The investigation began the way real investigations always begin, quietly, not like television. No dramatic music, no midnight break-ins, just patient work. Daniel filed a confidential notice challenging the power of attorney but did not yet serve anyone. He wanted to see who tried to use it next. I installed cameras, not the obvious kind, small ones, one above the front porch light, one in the workshop rafters, one facing the file cabinet in my study, one inside the hallway smoke detector. I had installed surveillance systems before most young detectives knew how to spell surveillance. The equipment had changed. The principle had not. People reveal themselves when they think nobody is watching. I also called an old friend. Her name was Marlene Voss. She had been a forensic accountant for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation before retiring into private consulting. She was small, sharp-eyed, and had the temperament of a church librarian who could find a missing comma in a murder confession. "Grant Ellison," she said when she answered. "Either somebody died or somebody stole something. Maybe both, depending on how mad I get." She sighed. "You still making bad jokes with no humor in them? Still breathing, aren't you?" I sent her what I had. She called me 2 days later. "Your son-in-law is broke," I assumed. "No, you hoped. I'm telling you. He's not just broke, he's buried." She had found 3 civil judgments, 2 investor complaints, unpaid payroll taxes under a previous LLC, and a lawsuit in Davidson County from an older couple who claimed Carter convinced them to invest in a property deal that never closed. The case had settled, sealed. Bell Meridian Capital is not registered the way he represents it, Marlene said. He's using language that dances right along the edge of securities fraud. How close to the edge? Grant, 1 foot is already over. Then she found the second document, a listing agreement. My commercial building in Columbia had been quietly prepared for sale, not listed publicly yet, but a real estate broker had completed a valuation, photographed the exterior, and drafted a packet using the forged power of attorney. Asking price, $740,000. The broker's name was Travis Mullen. I knew him by reputation. Slick, fast, always smiling in newspaper photos with oversized checks for charity events. The contact person on the packet was not me. It was Allison Bell, and below her name was Carter's cell number. That was when I realized she was not just being manipulated. She had signed at least one of the requests herself. I sat with that knowledge for a long time. The mind tries to protect the heart. It says maybe she didn't understand. Maybe Carter told her it was temporary. Maybe she thought she was helping. Maybe. But ink does not care about maybe. Neither does a signature. I asked Daniel what our next move should be. Keep watching, he said. That was hard. You may think revenge is loud, it is not. Real revenge is paperwork. Real justice is patience when every bone in your body wants confrontation. For 3 weeks, I let them believe I was unaware. Carter came by once with Allison. He wore a brown leather jacket and carried a bottle of bourbon he knew I did not drink. Grant, he said, stepping into my living room like a buyer inspecting a property. You look good. That was Carter's way. Compliments that sounded like measurements. He asked about my health. He asked about taxes. He asked whether I had considered simplifying things. Old assets can become burdens, he said. I looked at him over my coffee. So can young men with debt. His smile froze. Allison shot me a look. Daddy Carter recovered quickly. Fair enough, you always had a dry sense of humor. No, I said, I had a wet one. It drowned. He did not know what to do with that. People like Carter need conversation to move like a sales pitch. If you give them silence, they start filling it. And men reveal themselves in what they rush to explain. He told me the market was changing. He told me commercial real estate was risky. He told me his firm could help reposition my assets. He told me family should be proactive. Then he said, I just don't want Allison to be stuck cleaning up a mess if something happens to you. There it was. The loving mask. Behind it, the hunger. I looked at my daughter. Is that what you're worried about? Cleaning up my mess? Her eyes watered. I'm worried about you. I know what worry looks like. She looked down. Carter stood. Well, we should go. Think about what we discussed. I will. He smiled. Good. After they left, I checked the camera in the study. While Carter had kept me in the living room, Allison had gone down the hall to use the bathroom. She did not go to the bathroom. She went into my study. She opened the bottom drawer of my file cabinet. It was locked. She tried it twice. Then she took a picture of the lock with her phone. My daughter, the little girl who once taped a Father's Day card to my badge because she thought it would keep me safe. She stood in my study and photographed my lock. I watched the video 3 times. Then I called Daniel. It's time to widen the circle. He understood. The next person I called was not a lawyer. It was a man named Raymond Cole. Ray and I had worked together in the state fraud unit, long before retirement softened our knees and hardened our opinions. Ray had later gone federal, spending 20 years with the U.S. Attorney's Office as an investigator on financial crimes. He owed me nothing, but in 1997, I had testified in a case that saved his career when a defense attorney tried to bury him under a false misconduct claim. Some debts are not written down. He answered on the 3rd ring. Ellison, he said, tell me this is about fishing. It's not. Then I already hate it. I sent him Carter's company materials, the forged PUA, and Marlene's preliminary findings. He called the next morning. This isn't family drama, Ray said. I know. No, you don't. This guy is running investor money through at least 4 shell entities. One of them received funds from a widower in Georgia, a church retirement account in Alabama, and your daughter's home sale proceeds. I closed my eyes. How much? Tracked so far? Over $2 million. I heard the old refrigerator hum in my kitchen, Ray continued. Your forged POA may have been his next liquidity event. He needed your commercial building, maybe your house, maybe both. Can you move on it? Not officially from me. I'm retired. But I can make a call. What kind of call? the kind where people stop calling it civil. That was the first time I felt something close to relief, not happiness. Relief, there is a difference. Happiness warms you. Relief just lets you breathe without choking. But that was not the worst part. The worst part came from Emily. She was 16 by then, tall like her mother, quiet like Margaret, with a habit of noticing more than adults wanted her to notice. She came to my house on a Sunday afternoon while Allison thought she was studying at a friend's place. I found her sitting on the porch steps when I came back from church. Her eyes were red. "Grandpa," she said, "is Mom trying to take your house?" The question landed so hard I had to sit beside her before answering. "Why would you ask me that?" She pulled her sleeves over her hands. "Because Carter said once you're declared incompetent, everything gets easier." I looked at her. The birds kept making noise in the oak trees like the world had not shifted. "When did he say that?" "Friday night. He thought I had earbuds in." "What else did he say?" She shook her head. "I don't want Mom to go to jail." There it was, the real wound. Children always end up holding the knives adults throw. I put my hand on her shoulder. "Emily, listen to me. Your job is not to protect grown people from consequences. She cries all the time, I know. She says Carter is just under pressure. Maybe he is. She says you hate him. I don't hate him." She looked at me. That was the first lie. I almost told her. I corrected myself. "I don't trust him." Emily wiped her face. "I recorded them." I went still. "What?" She pulled out her phone. I didn't know what to do. The recording was poor quality, muffled by distance and teenage fear. But it was enough. Carter's voice came through first. "If Grant fights, we use the evaluation." Allison said something too soft, then Carter again. "You want to live in a rental forever? You want Emily's college gone? Your father is sitting on assets while we drown." Allison's voice sharpened. "He'll never forgive me." Carter laughed. "He won't remember half of it by the time we're done." My daughter said, "Don't say that." But she did not say no. That was the part that broke me. Not Carter. I expected Carter to be Carter. But Allison, my child, she did not say no. I sat on the porch with Emily while the recording ended. She was trembling. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay. But men my age should be careful with that sentence. Sometimes okay never comes back. Sometimes you only build something survivable from the wreckage. So I told her the truth. "You did the right thing. Is Mom bad?" I looked out at the gravel drive where Allison had once learned to ride a bicycle. "No," I said slowly. "Your mother is wrong. There's a difference, but wrong can still do terrible damage," Emily cried then. Not loud, just folded into herself. I held my granddaughter while the sun moved behind the trees, and for the first time in many years, I wished Margaret were there not for me, but for the child caught in the middle of what greed had made. The villain network revealed itself piece by piece. Carter was the center, but he was not alone. There was Lorna Peel, the notary who had stamped my forged signature. She operated out of a tax preparation office in Antioch and had notarized 27 documents for Carter's companies in 18 months. There was Travis Mullen, the real estate broker, who prepared the sale packet for my commercial building without ever speaking to me. There was Devin Cross, Carter's so-called compliance consultant, a disbarred attorney from Memphis who still wrote legal letters on expensive paper without using the word attorney anywhere. There was a bank employee named Felicia Grant, who accessed my account profile after normal business hours, then claimed it was a training mistake. And there was Dr. Niles Abramson. That one surprised me. He was not my doctor. He was a geriatric psychiatrist in Nashville who had signed a preliminary cognitive concern letter based on family reports without ever examining me. Family reports. That meant Allison. Daniel was furious when he saw it. "This is the foundation for a conservatorship petition," he said. "A what?" "If they convince a court you can't manage your affairs, someone gets appointed to manage them for you." "Allison? Or someone she nominates?" "Carter." Daniel did not answer. He did not need to. There are moments when an old man feels every year in his bones. That was one of them. Not because I was afraid of court, because I finally saw the shape of the plan. First, forge the POA, then gather financial information, then prepare assets for sale, then create a medical record suggesting incompetence, then pressure me privately. If I resisted, file for conservatorship. If I got angry, use my anger as evidence. If I threatened Carter, call police. If I sounded confused, call doctors. And if everything worked, my daughter would stand before a judge and tell him, with tears in her eyes, that she was only trying to protect her aging father. I had spent my career watching criminals underestimate procedure. Carter did not. That made him more dangerous. He understood that the law, when lied to carefully, can be used like a weapon. But he forgot something. I understood that too. The private confrontation happened on a Thursday evening. Allison came alone. At least she thought she did. Carter waited in the car at the end of the driveway. Engine running. I saw him on the gate camera. Allison knocked instead of using her key. That told me she knew the house had changed. I let her in. She looked tired, not movie tired. Real tired, the kind that makes a face look older from the inside. "Daddy," she said, "we need to talk." "Yes," I said, "we do." We sat in the living room under Margaret's portrait. That was not an accident. I wanted my wife in the room, even if only in oil and memory. Allison began softly. She said she was worried. She said Carter had explained things. She said I was becoming paranoid. She said I was isolating myself. She said Emily had noticed changes. That made my hands tighten. "Not much." "Enough, do not use Emily," I said. Her eyes flashed. "I'm not using her. I'm trying to protect this family. From me, from what's happening to you, and what is happening to me." She leaned forward. "You don't remember conversations. You accuse people. You're suspicious of Carter for no reason. You sit in this house surrounded by old papers and guns and memories. That isn't healthy." I looked at her. "You think I'm confused. I think you need help." "No. Carter thinks I need a court order." She went pale. "Just a little. But enough." "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." She stood. "This is exactly what I'm talking about." I remained seated. "Allison, did you sign a request for my bank records?" Her mouth opened, closed. "Carter said we needed to understand your situation." "My situation?" "In case something happened." "Did you know about the power of attorney?" She looked toward the window, a child looking for an exit. "Daddy, did you know?" Her voice broke. "You don't understand the pressure we're under." That answer told me everything. I felt something inside me fold, not break, fold, like an old letter put away for the last time. "You forged my name." "No, I didn't forge anything." "Who did?" "I don't know." "Lorna Peel?" I said I don't know. "Carter," she snapped then. "You always hated him. I didn't trust him. You made him feel small. He did that himself. You think you're better than everyone because you were a cop. I think I know a thief when I see one." Her face changed. The daughter disappeared. For 1 second, I saw the woman Carter had trained to survive by attacking first. "You're old," she said, "and you're lonely, and nobody is going to believe you over your own daughter." The room went silent. Outside, a crow called from the fence line. I thought of Allison at 7 years old, asleep against my shoulder after a fever. I thought of Margaret whispering, "She's got your stubbornness." I thought of every bill I paid, every night shift I worked, every birthday I made sure I did not miss. Then I looked at the woman in front of me. "You're right," I said. She blinked. "What?" "Nobody wants to believe a daughter would do this." Relief crossed her face too quickly. She thought I was surrendering. That was her first mistake. She picked up her purse. "Then please let us help you." "I will think about it." "Carter says the petition is only a precaution." There it was. She had confirmed it, on camera, on audio, under Margaret's portrait. I stood slowly. "Allison." She turned. "Do not come back here with paperwork." Her eyes hardened again. "Then don't make us." After she left, I stood in that living room for a long time. The house was quiet, too quiet. I played the recording once. Then I sent it to Daniel. His response came 10 minutes later. "Do not engage further. They just crossed the line." But I had already known that. I needed them confident. I needed everyone involved in one place. I needed them to make the final move. I was not trying to win a fight. I was building a case. 3 days later, Carter made his move. He filed an emergency petition in Williamson County Chancery Court, seeking temporary conservatorship over me. The petition claimed I was suffering from cognitive decline, paranoia, financial mismanagement, and possible violent tendencies. That came from my gun safe, the one locked in my bedroom closet. The petition included Allison's sworn affidavit. My daughter signed a statement saying she feared I might hurt myself or others if confronted. She wrote that I had threatened Carter. I had not. She wrote that I had forgotten Emily's recital. I had not. She wrote that I had become obsessed with imagined conspiracies. I had not. She wrote that my late wife's death had destabilized his emotional functioning. That sentence felt like grave dirt thrown in my face. Carter's network moved fast. Dr. Abramson's letter was attached. Devin Cross wrote a memorandum urging immediate asset protection. Travis Mullins submitted a valuation of my commercial building, as if preparing for responsible management. Felicia Grant's bank access appeared as family-authorized financial review, and Lorna Peel's notarized power of attorney sat like a snake in the middle of it all. Daniel filed objections immediately, but Carter needed more than court. He needed drama. He needed me to look dangerous, so he created the opening scene. On the morning of the preliminary hearing, I arrived at the courthouse in Franklin at 8:20 a.m. I wore a gray suit Margaret had bought me for a retirement dinner. It was a little loose in the shoulders. Most things are loose after grief. Daniel met me outside. "Remember," he said. "Say little. I know. Grant, I know." Inside, Allison stood near the security checkpoint with Carter, Devin Cross, and a woman I later learned was a social worker Carter had contacted through one of his investors. Allison would not look at me. Carter did. He smiled, not big, just enough. We went through security. I placed my keys, belt, and wallet in the tray. The deputy at the scanner looked at my license, then at me. Something passed across his face. I had trained his father 25 years earlier, but he said nothing. Professional, good. We were directed to wait outside the courtroom. That was when Carter stepped close and said, loud enough for others to hear, "Grant, please don't make a scene today." I looked at him. I wasn't planning to. He raised his hands. "I'm just asking you to stay calm." Allison started crying on cue. People turned. A courthouse hallway loves a whisper. Carter lowered his voice. "We all know you brought a weapon. That was clever. Not true, but clever. A claim like that in a courthouse does not need truth. It needs urgency." Two deputies approached immediately. "Sir, step over here." I did. Daniel moved with me. Carter said he threatened me last night. I did not, I said. Allison covered her mouth. Devin Cross shook his head like a disappointed minister. The deputies asked me to turn around. They had no weapon, no evidence, but they had an allegation in a courthouse, a pending conservatorship petition, and a crying daughter. That was enough to humiliate me, maybe enough to rattle me, maybe enough to make me angry. That was Carter's plan. He needed one outburst, one shove, one curse, one old man cracking in public. I gave him nothing. I placed my hands behind my back. And that is when the elevator doors opened. The woman in the navy suit was named Angela Reeves. At the time, she was the deputy district attorney over financial crimes for that region. Before that, she had been a young prosecutor on one of my cases. I remembered her standing in a courtroom 22 years earlier, hands shaking behind a legal pad while she cross-examined a banker who had stolen from elderly clients. After the verdict, I told her, "You did fine work." She never forgot. Behind her stood Raymond Cole and a TBI special agent named Marcus Lee. Angela looked at the deputies. "Stop everything right now." Deputy Martin said, "Mom, we have a report. You have a false report inside an active financial crimes investigation." Carter's face changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. The first crack in the glass, Angela turned to him. "Mr. Bell, do not leave this floor." Carter laughed once, a bad laugh. "Excuse me?" Ray Cole stepped forward. "Carter Bell, we have search warrants being executed at your office, your residence, and Bell Meridian Capital as of 8:32 this morning." Allison stared at him. "What?" Carter looked at her, then away. That was the moment everything changed. Angela faced the deputies again. "Mr. Ellison is a cooperating victim and witness. Remove those cuffs." They had not fully locked yet. The deputy stepped back. "I'm sorry, sir." I nodded. He had done what policy demanded. I was not angry with him. Angela handed Daniel a folder. "Judge Haskins has been notified. The emergency conservatorship petition is stayed pending criminal review." Devin Cross began backing toward the stairs. Marcus Lee turned his head. "Mr. Cross, that includes you." Devin stopped. The hallway had gone completely silent now. No whispers, no shoes, no paper shuffling, just breathing. Allison looked at me. For the first time that morning, her tears were real. "Daddy," she whispered. I did not answer. Because at that moment, I did not know whether I was looking at my daughter or at a witness who had helped steal my life. The trap closed in pieces. That is how traps work when they are built properly. Not with one dramatic slam. With doors locking down a hallway. At 8:32 a.m., agents entered Carter's Brentwood office. They found investor packets, altered bank statements, blank notarized forms, and a shred bin full of documents that had not yet been destroyed. At 8:41 a.m., officers entered Carter and Allison's rented townhouse. They found a folder labeled GE, Transition. Inside were copies of my property records, my bank profile, photographs of my home, a draft petition to sell my commercial building, and a handwritten note in Carter's blocky print. Pliff cognitive decline. Use emotional angle. Need judge before June payment default. Allison, at 8:53 a.m., Marlene Voss sent Angela's office her full tracing report. The $317,000 from Allison and Carter's house sale had not gone into medical office buildings. It went into three places: $92,000 to repay earlier investors, $48,000 to Carter's personal credit cards, $61,000 to a woman in Atlanta named Serena Vale, who turned out to be both an investor recruiter and Carter's mistress. The rest moved through shell accounts in amounts small enough to look like business expenses unless someone knew what to ask. Marlene knew. At 9:10 a.m., Lorna Peel was interviewed at her tax office. At first, she claimed I had signed the power of attorney in person. Then agents showed her traffic camera footage, proving I had been at a veterans charity breakfast in Columbia. At the same time she claimed I sat in her office. She asked for a lawyer. At 9:22 a.m., Felicia Grant at the bank admitted Carter had paid her $4,000 to pull account information. She called it a favor. Financial crimes people do not like that word. At 9:40 a.m., Dr. Abramson's office produced emails from Allison and Carter describing my alleged symptoms. But there was no examination, no clinical interview, no testing. Just a letter drafted after Carter promised the doctor a role in ongoing elder case evaluations through his investor network. At 10:15 a.m., Judge Haskins entered the courtroom. Nobody sat casually. Carter still had not been arrested, and that made him bold enough to think he could talk. "Your Honor," he said, "this is a misunderstanding being weaponized by Mr. Ellison's old law enforcement connections." Judge Haskins looked down at him over her glasses. "Mr. Bell, you are not counsel." Devin Cross stood. "Your Honor, I represent." Angela Reeves rose. "Your Honor, Mr. Cross is a disbarred attorney in Tennessee and is currently under investigation for the unauthorized practice of law connected to this matter." The room went cold. Devin sat down. Judge Haskins looked at him. Wise choice. Then Angela spoke for 12 minutes, calmly, precisely. She described the forged power of attorney, the unauthorized bank access, the false medical letter, the attempted sale preparation, the investor fraud, and the false weapon allegation made in the courthouse hallway. When she played the hallway security audio, Carter's own voice filled the courtroom. "We all know you brought a weapon." Then the deputy's response. Then my silence. Then Angela's arrival. Allison covered her face. Carter stared straight ahead. The judge turned to him. "Mr. Bell, did you make that statement knowing there was no weapon?" Carter's lawyer had not arrived yet. Carter opened his mouth, closed it. Judge Haskins nodded to the bailiff. "Mr. Bell will remain available to investigators." Angela said, "Your Honor, warrants have been approved." That was when two agents moved. Carter stood halfway. "Ali, tell them." Allison looked at him. He said it again, sharper. "Tell them." She did not. The agents turned him around. For the first time since I had known him, Carter Bell had nothing charming to say. They arrested him in the same hallway where he had tried to have me humiliated. Wire fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of an elderly adult, reporting, conspiracy, securities violations pending federal review. Lorna Peel was arrested that afternoon. Felicia Grant 2 days later. Devin Cross the following week. Travis Mullen agreed to cooperate, then tried to minimize his role until emails showed he knew I had never authorized the sale. Dr. Abramson lost his clinic contract before criminal charges were even decided. But Allison was not arrested that day. That was the hardest part for people to understand. They wanted the simple version. Greedy daughter, evil husband, old father wins. But life does not cut clean like that. Allison had signed documents. She had lied in an affidavit. She had helped build the false picture of me. But she was also the person Carter had financially trapped, emotionally cornered, and threatened with ruin. The law had to decide what she was: victim, accomplice, both. I had to decide something worse. Whether I still loved her. The answer was yes. And that did not save her from consequences. The months between the arrests and the trial were some of the longest of my life. People think justice starts when handcuffs go on. It does not. Handcuffs are noise. Justice is waiting. Depositions, motions, continuances, discovery, play offers, medical records, bank subpoenas, expert reports. Every week a new envelope came. Every week I learned another ugly detail. Carter had been running what prosecutors called a rolling repayment scheme. Money from new investors paid old investors just enough to prevent complaints. He targeted people close to retirement, widows, church members, small business owners, and family networks where trust traveled faster than paperwork. He used Allison as credibility. My daughter hosted dinners. She poured wine. She smiled at older couples and said, "Carter has helped us understand financial freedom." She did not know everything, but she knew enough to stop inviting people. She did not. That was the line prosecutors cared about. It was also the line I could not stop seeing. Emily moved in with me for a while. Allison agreed to it after social services got involved, though I think agreed is too generous. She was drowning in shame and legal fear. Carter's accounts were frozen. Their rent was overdue. Her friends had stopped calling. Emily took the guest room that still had Margaret's quilt folded at the foot of the bed. The first night, I found her standing in the hallway looking at old family photos. "Do you hate Mom?" she asked. "No. Do you hate Carter?" I thought about lying. "No," I said, "but I hope he has a very long time to consider who he became." She almost smiled, almost. She says you won't talk to her. I'm not ready. She cries. So do I. Emily looked at me like children do when they realize adults are not mountains. Just people standing still, because falling would scare everyone else. I wanted to protect her from all of it, but truth had already entered her life. You cannot make truth leave by turning off the lights, so we built routines: breakfast at 7, school drop-off, dinner at 6 unless she had practice, homework at the kitchen table, no television news if Carter's case was mentioned, Sunday church if she wanted. Some Sundays she did, some Sundays she stayed in bed. I let her. Grief has its own calendar. One evening in October, Allison came to the house. Daniel advised me not to meet privately. So we sat on the porch with Emily inside and a recording device visible on the small table between us. Allison looked thinner. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, no performance for a long while. She said nothing, then she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked out at the yard. The maple leaves were turning. "You need to be more specific." She flinched. "I'm sorry I signed the affidavit." I waited. "I'm sorry I let him say you were confused." I waited. "I'm sorry about the power of attorney." "Did you know my signature was forged?" she cried then, quietly. "Yes, there are words you can prepare for and still not survive cleanly." I nodded. She wiped her face. "He said it was just temporary. He said you'd never agree because you hated him. He said we would lose everything. He said if I didn't help, Emily would know it was my fault. Your house money was already gone by then." I didn't know at first. "But later?" She looked at me. "Later, I suspected. And still you helped him come after me." She covered her mouth. I was scared, so was I. That surprised her. Maybe she had never imagined me scared. Children rarely do, even adult children. "I was scared," I said again, "because my daughter looked me in the eye and helped a man build a cage around me." She bent forward like I had struck her. I had not raised my voice. Sometimes calm truth is crueler than shouting. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "Good." She nodded, crying harder. "I deserve that." "No," I said. "You deserve the legal consequences of what you did. Forgiveness is a separate matter. Do not confuse them because it makes you feel better." She looked at me then, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. "I miss Mom," she whispered. "So do I. She would hate me, that I could not allow." "No," I said. "She would be heartbroken." "There is a difference." Allison closed her eyes. The porch light clicked on automatically. For a second, she looked like the little girl who used to fall asleep in the truck after county fairs, sticky with cotton candy, trusting me to carry her inside. Then she opened her eyes, and she was the woman who had signed my name away. Both were true. That is what betrayal does. It does not erase love. It poisons the room where love lives. The trial began in February. By then, Carter had rejected 2 plea offers. His pride would not allow him to admit fraud. His lawyer, a sharp man from Nashville named Everett Sloan, built the defense around one idea. Carter Bell was a legitimate businessman whose deals failed, and Grant Ellison was a bitter retired lawman using old connections to criminalize a family dispute. It was not a bad strategy, ugly, but not bad. Men like Carter rely on complexity. If enough accounts, transfers, entities, signatures, and conversations are thrown at ordinary people, they may decide the truth is too tangled to punish. The prosecution had to make it simple without making it shallow. Angela Reeves did that. Her opening statement lasted 23 minutes. She did not shout. She told the jury Carter had stolen 3 things: money from investors, authority from an elderly man, and trust from a family. She described the sale of Allison's house. After the defendant persuaded his wife to sell their family home, more than $300,000 should have gone into legitimate investments. Instead, it paid old investors' personal debts and the defendant's private life. Carter stared at the table. Allison sat 2 rows behind me. She had entered a plea months earlier to reduce charges. Facilitation, false statement, and attempted financial exploitation. Her agreement required testimony, restitution cooperation, probation review, and community service after sentencing. People asked if I was angry. She got a deal. I was too tired for simple anger. The state needed her testimony. Emily needed her mother not buried alive, if there was still a chance at rebuilding. And I needed the truth more than I needed revenge. But do not mistake that for softness. When Allison took the stand, I did not look away. The prosecutor asked her name. Her voice shook. She explained the house sale. She explained Carter's promise. She explained the missing money. Then Angela asked about me. Did you sign an affidavit claiming your father was mentally unstable? Yes. Was that statement true? Allison closed her eyes. No. Did you know it was false when you signed it? A long pause. Yes. A juror in the front row looked down. Angela continued. Did you know the power of attorney bearing your father's signature was not actually signed by your father? Yes. Why did you proceed? Allison cried. The judge handed her tissues. Carter would not look at her. He told me we were desperate, she said. He told me Dad was selfish. He told me it wasn't stealing because I would inherit someday anyway. Angela let that sit. The courtroom absorbed it. I would inherit someday anyway. That sentence has destroyed more families than alcohol, more than divorce, more than distance, the belief that love is a down payment on someone else's property. Everett Sloan cross-examined Allison hard. He called her a liar. He suggested she was blaming Carter to save herself. He showed text messages where she asked Carter when Dad's building could be liquidated. That hurt, but Angela had prepared for it. On redirect, she asked Allison what Carter replied. Allison read the text aloud. Once court signs off, we move fast. Keep him emotional. Keep him emotional. That was Carter's whole strategy for me. Pleal the old man, make him angry, make him look unstable. Then take everything under the banner of protection. But I did not get emotional on command. That was one thing my years had given me. A slow heart when men like Carter needed a fast one. Marlene Voss testified next. If the trial had a spine, Marlene was it. She walked the jury through bank records with clean charts and plain words. No theatrics. Money in, money out. Investor funds commingled, statements. Personal expenses, payments to earlier investors labeled as returns. The $317,000 from the house sale. The transfer to Serena Vale. The credit cards, the car lease, the shell companies. Carter's lawyer tried to confuse her with terminology. Marlene looked at him over her glasses. Sir, calling a hole a liquidity gap does not make it less empty. One juror coughed to hide a laugh. Even the judge looked down. Then came Lorna Peel. She had taken a plea. She admitted Carter paid her to notarize documents without signers present. She tried to say she thought it was harmless. Angela asked her, did you believe notarizing a forged power of attorney over a retired man's assets was harmless? Lorna's lips trembled. No. The jury watched her carefully. People understand signatures. They understand the sacredness of a name. You can complicate financial fraud. You cannot complicate a forged signature. Then came the bank employee. Felicia Grant admitted accessing my profile. She claimed Carter told her I had authorized it. Angela showed the jury the $4,000 payment Carter made to Felicia's cousin's landscaping company 3 days later. Felicia lowered her head. Then Dr. Abramson. He was not charged criminally at that point, but his testimony was brutal. He admitted he wrote a cognitive concern letter without examining me. He said he relied on family information. Angela asked, Doctor, is it standard medical practice to suggest cognitive impairment in a person you have never met? No. Is it ethical? He swallowed. No. Did you know your letter was being used in court to restrict Mr. Ellison's rights? I understood it might be. And you wrote it anyway? Yes. I felt the jury turn toward me then, not physically, but emotionally. There is a moment in trials when people stop seeing documents and start seeing the person those documents were meant to bury. That was the moment. Then the defense called its witnesses. 2 investors said Carter had seemed sincere. A former assistant said the business looked real. Travis Mullen tried to present himself as an innocent broker who relied on documents provided. Then Angela showed emails where he wrote, Is old man actually signing, or are we going through daughter? The courtroom went still. Travis claimed it was a joke. Nobody laughed, finally. Carter testified. His lawyer probably advised against it. But men like Carter cannot resist the stage. He wore a dark suit and spoke gently. He said he loved Allison. He said he respected me. He said his investment model failed because of market conditions. He said I had always disliked him. He said retired law enforcement officers often struggle when they lose control. That line was meant to cut. It did not. Angela stood for cross-examination with one folder. Just one. That should have scared him. It did not. She began with the house sale. Mr. Bell, did you tell your wife the proceeds from the sale of your home would be invested in medical office acquisitions? Yes. Had you acquired any medical office properties at the time? We were in negotiations. Yes or no? No. Did any of those proceeds go to purchase medical office property? We had business expenses related to. Yes or no? No. She moved to investor payments, then the forged power of attorney. He denied knowing it was forged. Angela played a recording. Not Emily's, mine. The one from my living room when Allison came to confront me. Carter was not in the room, but his phone call came through Allison's phone when she accidentally answered it on speaker as she entered the hallway. His voice filled the courtroom. Don't let him talk you in circles. He signs or we file. If he gets loud, use that. Remember, confused and aggressive. Confused and aggressive, the defense objected. The judge allowed it. Carter's face hardened. Angela asked, "Is that your voice?" He paused. "Yes, were you referring to Grant Ellison?" "I don't recall." Angela clicked again. The recording continued. Allison's voice said, "He'll know the signature isn't his." Carter replied, "By the time he proves it, the building's gone." The room went silent. Not quiet, silent. Even the air seemed to stop. Carter looked at his lawyer. His lawyer stared at the table. Angela asked no question at first. She let Carter sit inside his own words. Then she said, "Mr. Bell, would you like to tell the jury again that you did not know the power of attorney was forged?" Carter's mouth opened. Nothing came out. That was when I realized how justice sounds. It is not a shout. It is a man with too many lies finally running out of sentences. The jury deliberated for 11 hours, long enough to make everyone nervous, short enough to mean they were working, not lost. I spent most of that time in a small conference room with Daniel, Emily, and a paper cup of coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. Allison sat outside in the hallway. Alone at one point, Emily went to her. I watched through the glass. Mother and daughter sat side by side, not touching. Then Emily reached over and took Allison's hand. That nearly broke me more than the trial. Children should not have to be better than adults. When the jury returned, the courtroom filled quickly. Carter stood beside his lawyer. He looked smaller, not humbled, just cornered. The clerk read each verdict: wire fraud, guilty; forgery, guilty; financial exploitation of an elderly adult, guilty; conspiracy, guilty; report, guilty; securities fraud under state charges, guilty. Carter closed his eyes. Allison sobbed once behind me. Emily gripped my hand so hard it hurt. I did not smile. That surprises people. They expect victory to feel clean. It does not. A guilty verdict does not give you back Thanksgiving. It does not put a sold house back on its foundation. It does not remove your daughter's signature from a lie. It does not make your granddaughter unhear the truth. It only says the world saw what happened. Sometimes that has to be enough. Sentencing happened 6 weeks later. By then, federal prosecutors had coordinated with the state. Carter accepted responsibility for certain federal exposure in exchange for consolidated sentencing recommendations. But the judge still had wide discretion. Victims spoke: an elderly couple from Georgia, a retired school principal from Alabama, a widow from Hendersonville who had invested her husband's insurance money because Carter prayed with her in her living room. Then Allison spoke. She did not ask mercy for Carter. She apologized to the victims. She apologized to Emily. Then she turned toward me. The judge allowed it. "Dad," she said, "I helped him hurt you because I was ashamed, afraid, and greedy. None of that excuses it. I signed things I knew were wrong. I let him call you confused because it made stealing from you sound less evil. I don't know how to repair what I did. I only know I will spend the rest of my life trying." I looked at her. I still did not know what forgiveness would look like, but I knew that was the first true thing she had said in a long time. When it was my turn, I stood. My knees hurt. The courtroom waited. I had written a statement, but I folded it and put it back in my pocket. "Your Honor," I said, "I spent most of my adult life believing I understood crime. I was wrong. I understood evidence. I understood procedure. I understood the way lies move through paper. But I did not understand what it feels like when the lie uses your child's voice." No one moved. Mr. Bell did not only steal money. He studied love and turned it into access. He studied age and turned it into weakness. He studied grief and turned it into a legal strategy. He tried to make my memories of my wife look like mental illness. He tried to make my silence look like confusion. He tried to make my daughter choose fear over truth, and for a while, she did. Allison cried quietly. I kept my eyes on the judge. I am not asking the court to punish him because I hate him. I am asking the court to protect the next family he would have found. Then I sat down. Carter spoke last. He apologized the way men apologize when the sentence has not yet been announced. He said he made mistakes. He said pressure changed him. He said he loved his wife. Emily looked down at that. The judge, Honorable Karen Haskins, was not moved. She sentenced Carter Bell to 18 years in state prison, with federal time structured through related proceedings and restitution obligations following him. He would have to serve a significant portion before eligibility. Lorna Peel received 3 years, part incarceration, part supervised release, plus permanent loss of notary commission. Felicia Grant received probation with confinement weekends, restitution liability, and a felony record that ended her banking career. Devin Cross received 4 years for conspiracy, unauthorized practice tied to fraud, and related document preparation offenses. Travis Mullen avoided prison by cooperating but lost his broker's license and paid a heavy fine. Dr. Abramson's was referred to the medical board, lost privileges, and later entered a civil settlement with several victims. Allison received 5 years supervised probation, restitution participation, required financial ethics counseling, community service with elder fraud victims, and a suspended sentence that could activate if she violated terms. The commercial building stayed mine. My house stayed mine. The forged power of attorney was voided. My trust was rewritten. Daniel made sure no single family member could ever control my assets without 2 independent fiduciaries, a physician who actually examined me, and court review with notice to appointed counsel. That sounds cold. Maybe it is. But love without boundaries is not love. It is an unlocked door. After sentencing, I drove home alone. I told Emily to go with her mother for dinner. She hesitated. I told her again. Go, I said. You both need to learn how to sit at the same table without a lawyer present. She hugged me in the courthouse parking lot. You'll be okay? I smiled a little. No, but I'll be home. That was true enough. The drive back to Franklin took 40 minutes. The sun was low. The fields looked gold in that Tennessee way that can make even sorrow feel holy. I passed the road to Allison's old house in Murfreesboro without turning. I could have driven by it. I did not. Some ghosts do not need fresh flowers. When I reached my house, the gravel sounded loud under the tires. I parked by the workshop. For a while, I just sat in the truck. No deputies, no lawyers, no cameras, no Carter, no courtroom. Just the house, the oak trees. The porch light Margaret had picked because she said it looked welcoming. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon oil and old wood. Emily's school books were stacked on the side table. Margaret's photograph watched from the mantel. The kitchen clock ticked too loudly. I took off my suit jacket and hung it over a chair. Then I walked to the study. The file cabinet was still locked. The camera above the bookshelf still blinked. On the desk lay 3 unopened letters. One from the restitution office. One from Daniel. One from Allison. I did not open hers that night. I was not ready. Instead, I went to the workshop. I pulled the sheet off Margaret's rocking chair. Dust rose in the light. I sat on the concrete floor beside it because sitting in the chair still felt like trespassing. For the first time since the hallway outside the courtroom, I cried, not loudly, not dramatically. Just an old man in a workshop, crying beside a chair his wife would never sit in again because justice had come and still the house felt empty. That is what nobody tells you about winning. Sometimes winning is just getting to keep what should never have been taken. Sometimes winning is knowing the truth came out, even though the truth took half your heart with it. Months passed. Emily graduated the next year. Allison stood on one side of the auditorium. I stood on the other. Afterward, Emily made us take a picture together. Allison asked permission before standing near me. That small thing mattered, permission. Respect begins there. We are not what we were. We may never be. She comes by every other Sunday now. She brings groceries sometimes, not casserole. Never casserole. We drink coffee on the porch. We talk about Emily, weather, court payments, job applications, small things. She does not call me daddy unless she forgets herself. When she does, both of us go quiet. Forgiveness is not a door you kick open. It is a road you may or may not have strength to walk. I have taken a few steps, not because she deserves it, not because I owe it, because bitterness is heavy. and I am too old to carry Carter Bell around inside my chest. The house is still mine. The commercial building still sends rent every month. The trust is protected. My daughter cannot touch it. Neither can any husband, boyfriend, advisor, lawyer, doctor, or smiling man with a folder full of promises. I keep the forged power of attorney in a frame inside my safe, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Evil does not always kick down the door. Sometimes it knocks gently and says it is worried about you. Sometimes it uses your child's handwriting. Sometimes it cries in a courthouse hallway. I learned that love is not blindness. I learned that age is not weakness. I learned that patience can hit harder than rage. I learned that proof matters more than pain. I learned that greed does not destroy a family all at once. It asks for one small compromise, then another, until people no longer recognize the sound of their own lies. And I learned that some wounds do not heal quickly. Some only stop bleeding. People ask me what I lost. I could say money. I could say trust. I could say years. But the truth is simpler. I lost the version of my daughter who existed before I knew what she was capable of. And I kept loving the version who remained. That may be the hardest sentence I know. The last time I visited Margaret's grave, I brought yellow tulips. She loved those. I stood there a long while, my hand on the cold stone, and told her everything. About the trial, about Emily, about Allison trying, about the house still standing, about me still standing. The wind moved through the cemetery trees. For a moment, I could almost hear Margaret's voice. Don't let bitterness make a home in you, Grant. I looked back toward the road, toward the truck, toward the life that was mine again but not unchanged. Then I said, I'm trying, and I still am. I did not lose my family that day in the courthouse. I finally saw what was left of it. Sometimes justice does not bring happiness back. It only brings the truth into the light. I got my house back. I protected what my wife and I built. I watched the man who tried to destroy me face the consequences of his own greed. But no court in America can give a father back the daughter he thought he knew. Allison is still my daughter. Emily is still my granddaughter. And this house is still standing. But now every locked drawer, every signed paper, and every quiet Sunday morning reminds me of one thing. Love should never make you blind. Trust your heart, but protect your name. Because sometimes the person holding your hand is also reaching for what you spent your whole life building. I did not win that day because I was stronger. I won because I stayed calm. I waited, I gathered proof, and when the truth finally walked into that courtroom, it spoke louder than all their lies. So if there is one lesson in my story, it is this. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one holding all the evidence.